Yeah, thank you very much. It's nice to meet some of you for the first time this afternoon. So my name's Mike, and I was an English teacher for 18 years. I was a secondary English teacher, and during that time, I also did a lot of work one-to-one with boys coming to speak to me at break time, dinner time, after school, sometimes after they just stormed out of their maths lesson, and they always wanted to talk one-to-one. And so what I did was I started a lunchtime drop-in club and said to the boys, "Listen, let's do this. We're all saying the same stuff. Let's come in, bring your lunch. There's no agenda. You can decide what we talk about." And as you can imagine, all the other English teachers laughed at me and said, "No boys are going to give it their lunchtime to come and sit in a room, and talk about what it means to be a man." Well, little did they know that within a month, we actually had a queue down the corridor trying to get in. And this idea that boys and men don't like to talk is an absolute fallacy. It's not true at all. It's just so rare that we feel we have access to safe spaces to talk about, masculine identity, what it might mean to be a man. So I went to the head teacher and I said, "Listen, we're onto something here. Can you give me some time off timetable to look at the research, look at the data, and put something together that we really support the boys in our community?" And he took me off PSHE. So he gave me two free periods a week, 2 hours a week. And then over the next 3 years, looking at the research, the data, connecting with thought leaders in this space, started to produce a program that we could take boys out of lessons, talk to them about maybe what it means to be a man, give them the space for it, do a lot of listening. I think that's something that's missing in this space. I think we talk so we talk about boys a lot, but we don't talk with them a lot. And then after 3 years, it was something that boys were actually coming up and saying, "Mike, sir, can I do that course? Everyone loves it." And it was having a real big impact. So that's when I left and set up Progressive Masculinity. And we're in our fourth year now. So the main messages, going on to the questions that we give in schools, are firstly, mainly, is that masculinity and being male are things to be proud of. They're not things to be ashamed of. So many boys approach masculinity as if it's, something to be ashamed of, or something that's that's wrong, and that absolutely kills me. Second main message is that masculinity and masculine identity are things to be explored. It's a lifelong learning process. I'm still trying to figure out in some ways what kind of man I am, and that's what we're trying to do: provide these very safe, non-judgmental spaces where together we can try and figure some stuff out. And thirdly, we believe that every boy and every young man has the agency, or should have the agency, to design the kind of man that they want to be in the future. There are 4 billion men in this world. That means there can be 4 billion different ways of being a really good man. And we take this values-driven approach where we try and support boys to design the man, the friend, the partner, the father, just the kind of man that they want to be in the future. So the reasons why we're giving these messages, first off, is that masculinity in our society seems to be approached from a deficit perspective, something that's broken, something that needs fixing. So many boys over the last 4 years have told us they very rarely hear the word masculinity without the word toxic attached to it. And that cannot be right. I'm sorry, that can't be right. So what we're trying to do is show them the joy of masculinity, the beauty of being a man. I mean, nobody talks like that, do they? The joy and the beauty of being a man and the potential of masculinity. So what we found is that boys and men actually crave safe spaces. Our workshop program is always the same. We rock up and we've got a group of boys. That happened to me this morning. I was delivering the program at a school in Stafford. They've got their arms crossed. They expect to absolutely hate it. They think they're going to get lectured about toxic masculinity and Andrew Tate. Within about 20 minutes, you see them start to think, "Oh, this is actually all right." Within about an hour, you can't actually shut them up because they're so desperate for a space like that. So that's what we're trying to do. One of the main frustrations, like I said earlier, is that boys say that everyone talks about them and not with them. So a lot of our workshops is actually about listening. What are your frustrations? And when you give boys that safe space and young men have that space, actually what you find is that so many of their concerns are really, really valid, like they are. We take the agency approach, so that idea that 4 billion men, 4 billion different ways to be a man, you've got the agency. We take that approach because we believe that boys and men, the way we talk about boys and men, the language that we use, it's almost like we're this single homogenous mass that all possess the same characteristics, when actually we're an extremely diverse and complex social group. Yeah, our gender is the same, but we try and explore it through an intersectional lens. So race, sexuality, neurodiversity, faith, disability, these can all impact the way you see masculinity and the masculine pressures that you feel. So rather than looking at all boys and men as if we're the same, actually take this intersectional approach. That's the way that everyone feels seen and heard. We want every boy who we work with to think this is about me, regardless of his background or intersections. So moving on in terms of the messages that I think are unhelpful. Going back mainly to that deficit perspective, boys are constantly framed as potential threats. And I think I think it's a really damning indictment of the way that we approach masculinity in our society, that boys expect to hate conversations about it. Boys should be excited to talk about masculinity, but they're not. They dread it because in their young lives, they've learned that conversations about masculinity tend to be framed as some kind of attack, or it feels to them like it's some kind of attack. Um, we believe that it's damaging to impose ideas about masculinity. Lads tell us that everywhere they turn, it feels like someone's telling them what it means to be a man, imposing and dictating ideas about masculinity. When I think actually people like us in this meeting today, we can support, we can guide, we can motivate, we can even inspire, but we shouldn't be imposing ideas about gender and dictating what it means to be a man. That's not our job. Our job is to give agency and support to the boys to design that. I think finally the last one is this, and this isn't just boys and men, I think this is a general societal issue, is this idea that gender is a zero-sum game, that if you give boys any support, you must be neglecting the girls, or if there's a female empowerment thing, it must come to the detriment of boys. What we try and promote is a positive sum game where people realize actually if you're giving support to boys and men, that is going to benefit everybody. It's a positive sum mindset, and actually that we rise together. It's not a binary oppositional conversation. Yeah, and that's me. That's me working through my three. I've been pretty fast there, but I've gone through the three questions.
Well, that's great. So, anybody like to follow up with some questions? We do have 8 people on the call, not all visible. I have a couple of questions, Mike. You're saying that there are 4 billion ways to be a man, and you don't want to define it. But there are two things that occur to me. One is clearly a man is different from a woman, and secondly, clearly you don't want young men to be violent or abusive or that sort of thing. So although you say that you want the the boys to be free to define their masculinity, there must be some boundaries to it.
Yeah, of course there is. The boundaries are basic moral decency, and it's not about not challenging. A safe, non-judgmental environment doesn't mean you're not challenged. You are challenged. That's a key part of it. But you're challenged in a way that doesn't shame you. You're challenged in a way that doesn't humiliate you. If we come across a boy that does have maybe regressive, dominance-based ideas about masculinity, of course he's going to be challenged. But also, we have to understand that those ideas have come from somewhere. Everyone has accountability. Everyone has responsibility. We're all responsible for our actions. Nothing excused, and there's consequences, to actions. That's the way it should be. However, also, I think we should be taking a sympathetic approach. A lot of the socio-cultural factors that are influencing boys and young men today are promoting ideas about masculinity that maybe are negative or damaging or regressive and dominance based. So it is a challenging environment, but the way we frame the challenge is not as an attack, it's a way to grow. And we also encourage the boys to challenge us. This has to go both ways. Let's figure out an environment where we all challenge each other in a healthy way. We learn how to hold each other to account and without it escalating into, that defensive, aggressive mindset.
Hmm. And how do you differentiate between, you're doing work with boys about what it is to be a man. How does that differentiate them from girls and women?
Well, we don't run programs for girls and women, but what we're doing as a man is we're looking at incredible men who are out there in the world making it. What's really sad is that when you ask boys about their role models and who they look up to, they actually struggle to give you a lot of names. And the kind of men that are often being promoted through social media algorithms, they're not really the kind of men maybe that are that admirable anyway. So what we're trying to do in our program, I'm a big believer in the power of storytelling. As an ex-English teacher, you can, imagine why. So we tell them the stories about men like Kevin Sinfield and Rob Burrow, and that how their masculinity is actually rooted in values like selflessness, sacrifice, compassion, loyalty, and these can be amazing kind of cornerstones upon which to build your understanding of masculinity. And you're right, Mike. It's not. I think we live in a world where it's almost dangerous to say that things are different. We are different from women, of course we are, and it's not. You shouldn't be afraid to be cancelled to say that. And black men are in some way different than white men and Asian men. But what doesn't change is the values. Every one of those is still equally valuable despite their differences.
Do you find that when you give boys free rein to define their masculinity, that they are essentially moral
Yeah,
themselves?
I honestly do. And I think a lot of it's all about dropping the performance. We find that we make most progress when we get the boys to drop the performance. This idea that when the boys are together, they're different. And I don't quite like the term pack mentality, but you understand what I mean by that. They feel they have to show something about themselves, not really who they are. And when they drop that, I don't like the phrase open up. I think men have and boys have an overwhelmingly negative reaction to that. We use the phrase, let's just be real with each other. There's no reason not to be. Let's be real with each other in here about our feelings, about our flaws, about our dreams, about our aspirations. And when you find that when we drop the performance, then you actually find that there's a massive desire to be a decent, morally decent human being. They're just not sure how to take. That's why we do this values-driven approach. So we get each lad to pick 3 core values, and they can be different. There's no right or wrong. And then from the ground floor up, over the 2 days, help him build this picture of this man he wants to be around those core values.
Okay. Anybody else have questions? Can you just remind us what you go into schools and you talk to all the boys, or you talk to a group of 15, or you talk to them?
We've got different services. We do assemblies and things like that. We've got 4 ex-teachers on our staff, and they do staff training. We do parental support sessions, but our main service is our pupil workshop. So we work with 12 influential boys for 2 days, and then we provide the school with a package of resources and ideas for those 12 to work with other boys in the school to kind of spread that impact outwards. It's a peer support model because the younger boys especially listen to the older boys in a way that they would never listen to maybe a teacher or somebody else. With that, it took us 3 years to find the most effective model, and that was the model that we felt had the biggest impact.
Okay. When you say the influential boys, do you mean that that you're selecting the positively influential, or the bad boys?
Influential in any way the school feels. So within a pupil population, you've got different pockets of different boys. You've got your sporty boys, your academic boys, your kind of music boys. We want to hit all these pockets. So yes, the captain of the football team probably is influential, but actually not to everyone. So we provide guidance for the school on how to select the group for maximum impact, because it's not just about that group. It's about actually that group being empowered to change the culture in the school to make the other boys feel supported and seen and heard and valued.
Fantastic. Anybody else before we move on?
I've got a
All right.
question, if that's all right. I'm here on behalf of James Murdoch, MP, by the way. I should send his apologies. He was wanting to come. I was wondering what sort of reaction you get from teachers, because I guess teachers are kind of the gateway to boys. Are you finding there's a big culture in schools where teachers may be hesitant about the work you're doing? How do you kind of overcome those barriers?
No, we don't find any hesitancy. Teachers are desperate for support on this. And like I said, I don't know if you were here at the time, but I'm an ex-teacher myself. I was a teacher for 18 years. My wife's a teacher. Nearly all my friends are teachers, which is common in the teaching world. And when we go into our staff training, they're desperate. How do we talk to boys about this? How do we bring up sensitive topics without making boys feel attacked? What we find is that there's an overwhelming desire to support boys, but there's a lack of skills, a lack of confidence, a lack of knowledge. We've got a workforce that's 65% female in the teaching demographic, which is not a bad thing at all. But is that the work group that feels most confident talking to a adolescent boy about what it might mean to be a man in today's world? So when we go into our staff training, it's generally received very enthusiastically.